meant to be. right, we're calling to order school board meeting for April 26, 2022. Roll call, please.
Ms. Redonio? Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Ms. Coyle? Mr. Avia?
Here.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Ms. Hoover?
Here.
Ms. Steckity?
If we could now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I ask for a motion to enter closed session to discuss personnel issues, student discipline, review of closed session minutes, and sale or lease of property owned by the public body.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Avia?
Yes.
Ms. Hoover?
Yes. starting our April 26th open session school board meeting, and we're going to move along to approval of minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the April 12th, 2022 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the closed session of the April 12th, 2022 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, we're moving, our next section is public comment. I don't have any public comment in front of me, so I won't go through the guidelines at this time. We're going to move along to the consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Number 1, personnel recommendations. David Pierpont, WHS Counselor, Long-Term Sub. Francisco Delgado, WHS Special Education Teacher. Tiffany Teresi, Director of Student Services. John Dispenza, WHS Game Worker, and retirements. 2, approval of the April 2022 expenditure report. 3, ratification of the March 2022 regular. 4, approval of the SACID classroom lease. 5, renewal of the student accident insurance. 6, approval of the TAL service. And 7, resolution to abate working cash funds.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Sorry, I lost my page.
Ms. Steckity?
Yes.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Ms. Coyle? Mr. Avia?
Yes.
Ms. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Redonio?
Yes.
Moving along to informations and discussion. First, reading of proposed student handbook revisions.
Kevin Weck, our assistant principal from the high school, is here to discuss with the board recommended changes for our student handbooks for the 22-23 school year.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you to the board and Kevin Carey for having me here tonight. So this is our annual meeting that we have. We have the first reading tonight and then the second readings, I believe in 4 weeks at the next board meeting, just to finalize everything. Just to give you a little background on how the process works, we meet, first I send out to all of our administrative team kind of a template, a Google template, so that all the staff members have a chance to add or edit any changes that they'd see that they want for the following school year within their handbook, whether it's elementary, junior high, or high school. After that, they have about 2-3 weeks to do that. We then have a parent committee that gets together, and that's with a parent from the elementary, the junior high, and the high school. And then we have some students join us on that committee. So before I begin, I would like to give a shout out to Principal Tim Weiler. He's been a co-facilitator with me, but also to Liz and Cooper Rathburn, Jill and Emmett Hawkins, and Gina Wallen, and Josh Graham. They were all part of the committee this year and gave some great insight. So that's really where we're at, and I'm going to start with our elementary proposal handbook changes. I'm just going to highlight a couple, and then after that I'll give everyone a chance to ask questions, or if there are no questions, we'll move on to the junior high handbook changes. So one of the highlighted for the elementary is going to be the arrival school day. Students are asked to arrive at school no earlier than 7:45 a.m. at Manning and 8 o'clock at Miller for the start of the school day, because supervision cannot be provided until that time. Students are to remain outside when arriving at school unless directed to enter the building, and during inclement weather, students are encouraged to enter the building where they remain lined up until met by their teachers. And really, I think that's just because they're changing their arrival time that they wanted to add this for the handbook for next year. And then any other changes, that's basically it for the elementary. It's just the changing of the time for arrival.
So just to confirm, Manning and Miller are flipping back, because they flip-flopped this past year.
Right.
Yeah.
2 years ago, it was Manning first, then Miller, then they flip-flopped Miller, Manning, and now they're flipping back.
Yep.
Right.
Okay. Is there any, reasoning behind that, or
I believe that,
maybe we can get filled in later or
yeah,
something?
Tim and Lindsay got together and thought that this
I
was the
think part of
best
it is-
policy for them.
Working with Westway as well,
Yeah.
and what's kind of working for them as well as part of it.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the elementary? All right, so then I'm just gonna move over to the junior high. Just Just a couple highlighted ones for the junior high include, so parents and guardians are encouraged to monitor student grades through the Otis system. That's a software they'd like to kind of keep everything collected, and that way parents can look at the grades and some other data points to see where their child is at for each class. Families can go to the otis.com to create a family account and then go through that procedure to be able to use that software. I think that was just one of the big highlights. And then another highlight was on page 28. For the classes of 2027 and 28, 3 out of the 5 Fs in social studies, science, math, and literacy. As a blocked class, literacy counts as 2. At the end of the school year, we'll prohibit students from attending the 8th grade dance graduation ceremony. Administration will contact and communicate with parents and students that are in jeopardy of losing this privilege. For 29, then it goes on to saying 3 out of the 6, because literacy then will be 2 classes. That was really the only change. So nothing significant here. I just thought I'd highlight a couple. Are there any questions that you have pertaining to the junior high handbook? Okay, if
I
you
have
don't.
one quick question, just on the homework policy. Was this just made more general in order to give teachers a little more autonomy in
Yeah.
their own decisions?
I think
Okay.
rather than saying, hey, it's the 10%, just give some teachers, like you said, the autonomy, discretion to be able to determine what's best for the student in the class. Okay, anything else? All right, and then our last one is the high school. A lot of the high school ones were just updates, such as our school board members within the handbook and their roles. And then also the changes from guidance counselors to school counselors. That was just some verbiage that just needed to be changed based on the state of Illinois. And then the last one that I've highlighted is we're going from having career cruising as the software that our counselors use with our students to kind of figure out post-secondary work to going to this Maya Learning. Maya Learning is going to be a helpful resource available to WHS students through the counseling department, but the Maya software is really geared towards kind of really giving direction for our students in terms of what they need to do if they want to go into a college pathway, what courses they need to take, what they need to do in high school to be better prepared for that, and then if they want to go for a career, just what some of those opportunities are needed from them during their high school time, or what they should be looking for. So it's a better software, it seems like, more comprehensive.
When do they use that? At what point in their high school?
So they use
Right
it for
away?
all 4 years, and our counselors go into classrooms and they get them set up with it, and they start to show them, and take interest surveys to find out what they're interested in doing, and then that helps them start to figure out, well, if you want to go into to be a math teacher, what do you want to do in order to get there? What should you do in high school to be better prepared when you go off to college so you can be successful? But it seems like it's more specific than what we had before with the other software was Career Cruising, which didn't necessarily have the specifics entailed for each student based on their interests.
Is it easy to go back and forth as they change their minds with things?
Yes, it sounds, I haven't used the software myself, but it sounds like they really worked with software engineers in terms of understanding how that search bar can be more advantageous for our students. If they type in that they want to be a dentist, it's not just going to say, okay, these are the colleges that you should pursue. It goes back to what you should be doing in high school, what classes you should take, and then what colleges, based off the classes you take, will be more advantageous for you as a student. It also has a social emotional component in there as well.
Does
which
it
is-
speak at all to the students who might not be
The career.
geared towards a 4-year
Yeah.
traditional university path?
Yeah, so it's the college and career,
Okay,
kind of giving them what the pathways might look like for them.
awesome.
Yeah, so I think it's more kind of like a Google search engine where, you type it in and it gives you just a bunch of just different opportunities with that. I haven't used it personally, but I've heard good things. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it gives our children, our students, more opportunities to pursue what they want to do, more direction.
Cool. We look forward to hearing feedback on
Yeah.
it when it rolls out.
Yeah, we'll definitely be doing it at the end of the school year. Any other questions for the high school? All right. Well, that was great. Thank you all for your time. And then the second reading, I'll talk to Tim and we'll just show up. And if there's anything that happens between now and the next reading, just let me know. I'll be happy to make any changes or edits, okay?
All right.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
great night.
There are no other questions. We're going to move along to the strategic plan update.
And Nadine Norris, our Director of Teaching, Learning, and Technology, is here to provide the board with a very quick update, and hopefully we'll be approving our strategic plan.
Yeah, I provided for you a more updated version of the plan. As per your recommendations, we tried to be more specific in terms of dates and deadlines and expectations of when different benchmarks would be met. And we're going to continue to work on that and update that. In fact, I had a few updates again today from the junior high that weren't huge, were not really consequential, but you know, that's just an example of how we're going to continue to work on the plan. So I'm here to answer any questions, or do you have any?
So I just wanted to call out, you know, when we had our conversation around the strategic plan a couple weeks ago, you know, the board called out a need for something that is kind of one page, easily digestible for folks who are not education, have master's degrees in education, like most of the community. And so I love that you've done that here in this kind of, in this 1.5 pager, in that you've made it very approachable and attainable, in a similar way to how the Portrait of a Graduate is a very approachable and attainable document. So I wanted to thank the team for doing that, because I think it's gonna go a long way. And then I had a question, and this was kind of driven by our conversation about the junior high air conditioning project. And there seems to be a fair amount of interest on the board for some more forward-thinking uses of our construction dollars in the district in a more environmentally friendly way. Does that fit into the strategic plan somewhere? I know we've got a facilities piece of it. And along those kind of lines, is that something that we could potentially add in, like when we update this on a bi-yearly or yearly basis?
The goal with regard to resources was very general. It was really, you know, to match resources with student need. There wasn't a strategy addressing environmentally friendly or thinking outside the box. Certainly if the board wanted us to add a strategy or kind of expound on that concept, that can certainly be added. The one thing when you made your previous comment about kind of the one pager, the one thing that I wanted to do when I posted this to the website is to provide sort of a glossary of the acronyms that we used in the long version. I just wanted to call that out and make sure that you knew that we are sensitive to the fact that the information has to be accessible. So that's what you mentioned before. And then with regard to adding a strategy,
Yeah.
how about that?
I mean, it is kind of very broad, so.
Yeah. And I'm not necessarily saying an adjustment to this strategic plan as it
Right.
sits before we approve it. It's more of do we need to have a deeper conversation about this as a board and our direction? Because we do have a number of construction projects coming up.
Right.
And if that's a direction that this board wants to go into, how do we make that official? Right? So that it really kind of lives within our culture.
Sure.
So-
And I think that would start with the facilities committee, you know, having a conversation there in terms of, you know, when we're moving forward and we're doing, you know, projects, especially with the infrastructure, are we looking to be more green with some of our decision-making and investigate those opportunities? I think it starts there, that is brought to the board for a full board discussion, and the board, you know, essentially says, you know, adopts it as, yeah, this is, you know, part of what we're about and what we want to do, and then it would be incorporated.
Awesome.
Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nadine.
Moving along to our next topic, junior high HVAC system.
I'm going to have Joe just recap the project that we had presented. The other thing at first I want to start out with, the board had asked for us to do a little bit of additional investigation on a geothermal system. And both Steve Cashman and Dan McCurdy, who were here at the last board meeting, provided the board with a lot of, I think, useful information on geothermal systems. We also have, one of our board members also has a spouse who has a little bit of knowledge about geothermal systems. And I think we all have, at least I think we've all come to the conclusion that that is not necessarily the correct project for our district based on the number of wells that have to be put into place, their location under the parking lot, even our climate here in the Midwest, as well as, it's not that common of a system in our area. And so with that, we got a lot of good information about that. But the other thing that we did, Steve Cashman and Joe and I had conversations about, and again, that information was shared with the board. It is easier to be greener when you're doing new construction than it is in retrofitting a building. And unfortunately, we have very old buildings and we don't have a lot of space. We don't have vacant space for new buildings. But that certainly is, and one of our, comments back to the board was that is the type of thing that we will be looking at going forward and keeping that in mind, but also making sure everybody understands that those greener options are easier with new construction than renovations. So I just want to make sure that's clear to everybody. And then the other thing is, there is some, green aspect of this project, again, with replacing the lighting while we're going and doing the HVAC. All the ceilings have to come down and things like that, and so replacing that with LED lighting in this. So there is, a minor component as well. So I just wanted to highlight those things before Joe reviews the basic project that we're asking you to approve tonight.
And thanks again, Kim, for digging into that a little bit more. And I think it kind of connects to what Leo was just talking about in terms of future projects and just being as proactive as we can about that. I think one of the things from the email that I responded to you, one of the comments was that geothermal is not something that a typical school district wants to invest in unless carbon footprint is the primary driver for system selection. And I don't think we're there right now where that's our primary driver. And yet I still think it's of enough importance that moving forward, if there are new projects, from the get-go, we explore all of our options with an eye towards those kinds of things. So I appreciate all of the conversation about that.
And I think the other thing, unfortunately, our guests had left when we had those additional comments because they had gone through some of that, Joe and Steve and Dan, not necessarily with me, but they had already vetted a lot of that
Other
before.
options.
Yes. And so, anyway.
I think the conversation we had at the last board meeting was specifically around that, right? It was around what options have been explored.
Right.
And so you're right, if
Yeah.
we might not have even had it on the discussion for tonight if it weren't the case. But
But that's
I'm
all
glad
right.
we do.
But it's good. We got good information. and-
Exactly.
It was good to ask the questions.
Yep.
but It's not what we need right now.
Right.
A system like that just doesn't handle the extremes. So like the really cold days in the winter, and really hot days in the summer, it can't maintain it.
Do we have those here?
What's that?
No, we don't have any of those here.
But as far as like the green conversation, like the biggest thing for schools is solar. A lot of school districts are adding solar grids on roofs or fields. Initially, they were very expensive to put in. Now they're coming down, they're becoming more popular, so a lot more competition involved. So it's becoming a real option. The biggest one, I would say, like with a major roof replacement, putting that in after, when the roof is done, and then you don't have to worry about repairs underneath or, conversations like that. The goats on the roof has always been a dream of Lindsay in the district, I know. But again, I think like replacing the roof and then doing solar with it is the best way to do it.
Well, and we have roofing projects coming up,
Right.
you know, and some pieces, I see that the moss roof over at, Lace, I think it is, on
Yeah.
75th Street, that's been there for, I don't know how many years, but,
Right.
and then I look at our Kidney Bean High School and I think, oh man, if that roof was green.
The advantage with the high school roof is it has the pitch to it that
Yeah.
you need for a system like that. Like the grass on the roof, it does kind of work off of the incline, so you have to have that.
Yeah, and we can just install stairs for the goats, right?
Yeah, right.
They don't need stairs.
It's moss anyway, but we've got a lot of roofing projects coming up, solar, I think, I agree with that piece of solar coming
Yeah.
up and really potentially getting into a very affordable category
Right.
with
And
rebates
we-
and competition.
We did get information from ComEd specifically about the lights, so the replacement of it as proposed was about 14,000. Just for installation rebates, then energy savings like that, they don't put in, that's not that program, but obviously it would be much better efficiency.
Well, and we talked about a pretty significant labor savings too.
Yeah.
In the maintenance, or in the facilities group.
Right,
We
in
talked
repairs and
about
maintenance,
not
yeah.
having to replace every single light every single year and
Right.
all of those pieces.
Yeah, and lighting really, like, solar's the biggest option, but lighting is the most immediate, like, cost savings. Like, all the gyms, the lighting in the gym, it goes on in the morning, and in a lot of buildings, it's on all day. So, you know, you cut a lot of usage down with that, so.
I had a question about the rooftop units. Just thought about it. And you may have spoken to this. I kind of went back through. But, and this may go along with costs. It may go against kind of the being greener, energy efficient. But the company that, who ran the units we
Right.
had went out of business. Are there other units as a replacement? Was that looked into as an option?
Like, direct replacements?
Yeah,
So the only way that it would.
efficient replacements, I don't,
No, not really. The problem with that was the multi-zone aspect of it.
okay.
So a lot of companies right now don't make multi-zone units anymore. So each unit would have to be a custom-sized unit.
Okay.
So it just, and there was really only one company that they were able to find that would really even be in the ballpark of it. But it was still like, they don't meet energy code right now, so it's kind of like, they don't just make them anymore.
And then my other question was kind of getting into construction and reminding myself that I can't get to the dance floor or be, you know, I just question as things come up, or they find,
Right,
maybe watching too much HGTV, but
yeah,
if you get to a hiccup in construction and then,
yeah.
or this cost has changed, just kind of trusting that process, but
Right.
are you that person that's kind of the watchdog of how, I guess when we have to do bids for the work, and then as that work is happening?
It's more so, yeah, like once the project starts, there's always things that come up that get in the way that, then it's a change order, we have to work around this is what we came up with. I mean, we had that with the last project last summer, where it was a major electrical project, so there was a lot of issues getting from point A to point B, where we thought we could go this way, we had to adjust that because we just can't get from point A to point B. We have to go a different route. So there's a lot of things like that. I mean,
And that's what bothers me about it, because I think I asked at the last meeting, this can be done in 3 months.
yeah. I mean, it's
Is that-
hard to believe from someone who hasn't seen it.
Yeah.
But when they say go, I mean, they literally mean they go. So it's like, once the project starts, there's so many, like, the companies bring so many employees to keep up with the schedule because it is a lot of work. But the way that they schedule the work, I mean, this is what they do. And they have a deadline, like there's, whatever it's called. I forget.
Liquidated damages.
Yes, exactly. So
It's in the line.
There's,
Yeah.
so we build in a contingency knowing that there might be some, you know, even like with a house renovation, you start something and then you open up a wall and you're like, you know, there's surprises.
So the same thing here, we build in a contingency, and that's already factored into what we're estimating the cost to be. And then, our architect, the engineer, Joe, all keep, a close eye on the project, on the progress, on making sure people are doing things correctly. We don't pay people until we have certain things signed off on and things like that. So that is all part of every project, but also there are deadlines, and so it's incumbent upon the company that's doing the project. If they're running into issues timing wise, they need to let us know. That might mean they come in and bring a second shift crew in or something like that, or work on weekends, things like that, so that we stay on target.
Because our biggest thing is getting the kids back in there.
Right.
Yeah, well, and so there were two things that came up in the meeting that I don't remember if we spoke about them last week. One was, or 2 weeks ago, I should say. One was, that's a chunk of the reason why we're trying to bid this out early, was to try to give whoever does bid it as much time as possible, and as much lead time as possible to get all of the stuff in, so that when they hit the ground, they can hit the ground running, and we don't get caught up with equipment issues that literally is not here. So that was a big chunk of why we're a solid at least 6 months ahead of where we would normally bid this out. But then, I want to say we talked about this in the meeting, that they made the contingency larger than previous projects. I feel like they went a higher percentage of contingency because of the changes, the supply chain issues. I feel like I asked about supply chain, and they were like, yeah, we
That was,
bumped that
that was
contingency up.
the estimating, the company that did the estimating. They put in a higher percentage for inflation just because of the way things are. And it's, without, like, prior to COVID, it would be typical to award a project like this in February, March, and start in June. So, I mean, they're kind of used to deadlines like this, but again, like, right now with supply chain stuff, having the extra time is a humongous advantage. On top of that, like, because companies aren't on such a strict timeline, if this is awarded this summer, there's some stuff that they might be able to start now. They could start Christmas break, spring break, getting things done. It adds a lot to it. And plus, I think competition too, because they do have a lot of time, so it's an advantage to companies. I think more people will be involved or interested in it. So.
I have a question. The previous rooftop units, it sounded like they were problematic right away.
Yeah.
The equipment sounds like it wasn't the right equipment that was selected.
Yeah. So,
How do we avoid that for this project?
right. So a great example is the project we did with the automation system last summer. So when that automation system went in, say for example, you made the automation system, you're the only one that's able to work on it. So it's a proprietary system. So when we did the replacement of that, part of the bid, we said it has to be an open protocol system, so that if we have issues with you, we can bring in you to work on it and get the same result. When that project went, it was not put in the bid package as to what equipment to use. So like with this, we would put in specific equipment like a carrier or a train, or a major manufacturer. You put that in the spec to the project, where we will only accept this as equipment. So it's, yeah.
Okay, great.
That's what happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it was an off-brand, this
Right.
previous stuff, and.
Yeah.
Can you speak to the refrigerant? Because I think it came up in the email that there's the possibility this
Right.
refrigerant that is currently spec'd out
Yeah, so.
is being phased out.
So way back when they started phasing out R22 refrigerant, which is what we currently have, at that time, they switched to R410 refrigerant. But at the time, they said that this is not a long-term solution. Like, eventually, they're gonna have to change to something else. So what they're gonna phase out, they're gonna start phasing out 410, but the way that they're doing it is interesting because they're leaving it up to the manufacturers. So in some states, they're leaving it up to a carrier to design their system using this refrigerant versus this one. So they have two options right now, a R32 and an 4 something, I get confused, but those are the two that they're gonna focus on, most manufacturers are gonna use those. So, again, like at the time that we purchase this equipment, we need to use, that's gonna only come from the chiller. So, when we purchase a chiller, we have to we're gonna need to use the new gas with it.
Okay, and we'll be able to be that specific, because
Yeah.
I certainly hate to install something
Right.
and then instantly the
'Cause,
refrigerant is.
to use like one refrigerant versus the other, there's components you have to change. It is possible, but there are certain things about it that have to be, the right equipment for the right refrigerant. So, there are ways to go from one to the other without having to replace the entire unit. But if we have the opportunity, yeah, we should order it with what kind of what we're looking to use in the future.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to move along to the presentation of monthly financial statements.
Let's see, we have the March financials for you. This month, the district received $239,000 from the state. There's $26,000 of fiscal year 21 payments and $263,000 of fiscal 22 payments vouchered but not released. In the ed and tort funds, revenues are comparable. And again, received all that money in the ed fund. And then there is $159,000 of fiscal year 22 payments voucher but not released there. In the O&M fund, revenues are comparable to the prior year, and we did receive the classroom lease revenue from SASA during the month of March. And in the transportation fund, there's $103,000 of fiscal year 22 payments vouchered. As far as expenditures go, expenditures are slightly above the prior year averages in the ed and tort funds. And then the O&M fund is 65.55% spent to date. It was 59.69% spent last year at this time, which is fine. We've done a few more projects. And then obviously the transportation fund varies from year to year, but we've been receiving all of our invoices timely this year, so we're on target. Student activity account balances are there. We have, in terms of investments, $13.6 million invested. That again will still decrease for another month, and then when we get taxes in May, you'll start to see those balances along with the fund balance starting to go up. Does anybody have questions?
No questions? We're going to move on to the 2022-2023 student fees.
All right, and I just wanted to give you just a little bit of information. I attached the fees that we charge last year. We do know that the lock fees need to increase for next year based on the agenda, or based on fees from the manufacturer. I also did the historical fee comparison. So we have not, we held fees flat for the 2019-20, the 21, and the 22 school years. So typically this would be the time, obviously with the pandemic and remote and everything else, this would probably be the time where we might do a slight increase. If we did an increase, I would only suggest the basic fees, registration fees, in the 1% to 2% range. But again, even when you look at that, that's only a few dollars difference. And so I really wanted to have kind of a philosophical discussion with the board. Do we want to raise fees? Do we want to leave them static for one more year and then possibly next year do an adjustment? The only other thing is our preschool tuition program. Those fees could probably increase about 10%, just based on what other preschool district programs are in the area.
One of my questions.
And those fees have not changed since inception of the program in 2013-14.
Do you think that would mean if we held, we have to, we may have to go even a higher percentage than following year?
You know, like right now, you know, obviously we had some high inflation. We did just see that our copier paper costs are about double what they were. So we did order some paper this year at a lower rate while we could. I don't think they would, I would still only recommend like a 2 to 3% increase next year. A lot of the other things are holding steady. We haven't seen a lot of increase in the other things, obviously, you know, so in terms of those components, I think we're okay, but.
I mean, my concern with holding for another year is that we fall far behind to a point where then it becomes very challenging to catch back up, and we've seen that happen in multiple places in the district.
Yeah.
And that's shown up in a lot of different ways, so I'm, as much as I don't like to increase fees, I think a 1% is, 1 to 2 in there somewhere, is reasonable. And because it has been held steady for so long, and the program is, for me, for the preschool program, increasing that tuition, we have an amazing preschool program, and it's outstanding.
Yep, and we need to do more to market that program, so you will start to see some things coming out in your parent updates and things like that, because it is an amazing program.
Yeah.
And it's a great value for parents who are looking for a preschool tuition program. It's a great value.
Even with a 10% increase, it would still be a phenomenal value for our
Yep.
families,
And
so.
we have excellent staff.
Yeah, and we want to keep those excellent staff, keep that program, so.
Okay.
What is the annual tuition for preschool?
It's, for the 2-day program, it's $1,800. For the
Oh, I see.
3-day, it's a half-day program.
Okay, I see.
It's $2,250, and for our 5-day program, $2,700. So it's
Yeah.
incredibly reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll come back then with probably around 1 to 2% on the basic fees, and then an adjustment to the preschool for the next meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay, I like that idea.
No further questions. We'll move to our action items. First is the approval of the strategic plan. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the strategic plan as presented.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Avia?
Yes.
Ms. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Redonio?
Yes.
Ms. Steckity?
Yes.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Next, we'll move to our resolution, or the second one, a resolution declaring the intention to issue not to exceed 6 million working cash fund bonds for the purpose of increasing the district's working cash fund and directing the notice of such intention be published in the manner provided by law. The chair will entertain a motion to the resolution declaring the intention to issue not to exceed 6 million working cash fund bonds for the purpose of increasing the district's working cash fund and directing a notice of such intention to be published in the manner provided.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Avia?
Yes.
Ms. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Redonio?
Yes.
Ms. Steckity?
Yes.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Motion carries. Move to number 3, approval of junior high HVAC project. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the junior high HVAC project as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Redonio?
Yes.
Ms. Steckity?
Yes.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Avia?
Yes.
Motion carries. Number 4, board action on closed session minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the board action on closed session minutes as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Redonio?
Yes.
Ms. Steckity?
Yes.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Avia?
Yes.
Ms. Hoover?
Yes. Number 5, destruction of verbatim closed session minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the destruction of the verbatim closed session minutes from March 10th, 2020 through September 22nd, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Steckity?
Yes.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Avia?
Yes.
Ms. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Redonio?
Yes.
Before we move on to the second, if we could just note that this is a standard process.
Yes.
It happens every 6 months. This is nothing, just because it doesn't happen
Every meeting.
every single meeting, that, just to note that we, every 6 months, go through,
Right.
and it's a very standard process.
Thank you, Leah. Moving to the superintendent's report.
So a couple of announcements in my report. First of all, we have a change in the date and time of our next regular board meeting. The location and time of the May 17th regular board meeting of the Board of Education will be changed to 6 PM at the Westmont Village Hall. And then also just a reminder to the board that we amended board policy 2-110, which is the length of term of officers. And so now our officers' terms are 1-year terms. And so at our May 17th board meeting, the Board of Education will select new officers for the 22-23 school year. We'll also probably do our committee assignments and approve our board calendar for the upcoming year.
On the board calendar, can you, I think we've talked about this in the past, can you make some notations on like what things are standard
Sure.
for some of those meetings?
Oh, yeah.
And then I'm hoping that on the calendar for this upcoming year as well, we could get the quarterly finance and facilities meetings on the calendar, just so that we're not trying to like
Sure.
schedule something and we can just
Have advance notice.
have it there, here's when it is, and that's when we do it. Can we do that?
Yep, we can do that.
And Public Relations Committee,
Right.
Yeah.
Public relations, yep.
And something I asked about, I don't know if it's, you can instruct us or direct us on how, or the best way of doing this with committees and having stakeholder or community member involvement.
Yeah, and that will be part of our discussion at the May meeting. Right now, our Public Relations Committee, we do have some community involvement. And so we're gonna have a discussion whether or not the board would like to see that with some of our other committees as well.
It's a really, really, really good point.
yeah, and having them scheduled
Right.
through the year
Makes it a lot
will
easier
go
to
a
do
long
exactly
way.
that way. Yep.
You know, to say, hey, come join the Facilities Committee, we meet, join us.
Yep.
Strategic planning, is there community members?
Uh,
Is that PLC only?
not PLCs, no, there isn't committee members. The strategic plan, at this point, it would just be regular reporting to the board
Right.
on progress on the strategic plan. So there really isn't necessarily a committee that would meet.
Am I confusing, like the town halls that were
Right.
held, that's how
Right,
we got
right.
involvement? Okay.
Right.
Moving on to, are there any other questions for Kevin? Moving on to board reports.
I got lots of stuff. Does anybody else have anything? Because I have list of things.
All you.
Number 1, happy anniversary, everybody. It has been 1 year since we've been placed, officially
Yeah.
voted into our seats.
Is that all?
I know.
Just 1 year. On that
Some
note,
of you.
on that note, there will be 3 seats up for next year's election, the 2023 election. Start doing your research if you would like to sit here in these lovely positions. We have 3 seats opening up next year. DuPage County Board of Elections, look into it, because you could start doing your paperwork this fall, and it has to be in before December. So there's that.
The paperwork typically goes up, I was just on the thing today. Late September is when mid to late September is when the paperwork goes up, and signatures have to be in mid-December.
Yes, there we go.
And if you're searching on the Board of Elections website for information about the April election, it's not there, because they do one election at a time, and everything on the elections
There's
website is
midterms
geared
now.
towards the November election. So there will not be
The upcoming
information.
November election
Yes.
of this
Yeah.
year.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
what I just heard you say was that the information for what we're talking about wouldn't even be available until September.
It typically goes up on the website, a week
Isn't it
to,
October 1st?
1 to 2 weeks before you can start collecting signatures. So really, at the earliest that it will be on the website is probably September 1st.
Okay.
And it's a matter of when they finish, going through all of the candidate filings for the November election. Basically, when they finish all of that work, that's when they open up April.
So yeah, there's that. 3 seats opening. So, yeah, if you guys are interested. We just had our first spring concert at Manning this last Thursday. Yeah, it was Thursday. It was a crowded house. Everybody's pretty excited to get back to events for the school district. With that, there are other committees to join, as we discussed in the public, and teacher staff appreciation. We got to get out of saying teacher appreciation. It is a national holiday. It starts next week. It's teacher staff appreciation. Look to all your schools. There are sign-up geniuses galore. I can connect you with someone who's collecting for South School, since they're not at that process where they have a little group of parents that do anything, but I can get you connected to that person. But yeah, lots of stuff going on at Miller and Manning and the junior high, and I'm sure high school stuff is going on. I know Kevin's got that covered. Yeah. So that's it. That's all. I think that was it. Yeah. Cool. That's it.
That wasn't even that much.
It wasn't. I just felt like it was a lot.
Moving along, we don't have public comment, any public comment at this time, so moving to future meetings and events, we have a list. It makes me kind of anxious as I read all of them. Manning Drama Club performance will be happening April 29th, 2022, 7 p.m. at Manning. Westmont High School Spring Musical, April 30th, 2022 at 7 p.m. and May 1st at 2 p.m. at the Westmont High School Auditorium. Elementary PTO and committee meeting, May 2nd, 2022 at 6 p.m. at Manning Elementary. The Westmont High School Spring Art Exhibit and Concert will be May 4th at 7 p.m. at the high school. Manning's Open House will be May 9th at 6 p.m. at Manning Elementary. BPAC meeting, May 11th, 5:30 p.m. Miller's Spring Concert will be May 12th, 6:30 p.m. at Westmont High School. And then, as stated before, our next CUSD 201 board meeting will be May 17th at 6 p.m. at Westmont Village Hall. No other comments? We don't have any further closed session business. So the chair will entertain a motion to enter no, I'm sorry, that's wrong. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn the April 26, 2022 regular meeting of the Board of Education.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?